Welcome to International Definition. My name is Kenneth Freelain, and I'm going to be your host for today's edition of International Definition. Today on International Definition, we're going to feature the engineering tribute to the Presidential Inauguration of January 20th, 2013. Today, we're going to receive some information about the North American Water and Power Alliance. The North American Water and Power Alliance was conceived in the 1950s by the United States Army Corps of Engineers. Certain projects were called great projects, and one of the great projects involved the development of more water resources for the United States. The planners envisioned the diversion of water resources from some rivers in Alaska south through Canada by way of the Rocky Mountain Trench and other routes to the United States. And the entire project would involve 369 smaller and separate construction projects. The water would enter the United States through northern Montana. There, the water would be diverted to the headwaters of rivers like the Colorado River and others. The water would generate hydroelectric power as it passed through dams. The water supply would double the total amount of fresh water available to the lower 48 states, with its major focus being on the western states. This would solve the water shortage problems of the West for the foreseeable future. The amount of water available would in fact be so great that some water would be left over for use by Mexico by way of the Colorado River. By the way, today, the Colorado River is significantly depleted as it enters Mexico. The United States Army Corps of Engineers has studied this project in the late 1950s and in the early 1960s. This project was very close to realization. Washington State Senator Scoop Jackson was a significant sponsor. Senator Jackson was a person who believed in this project. The project was opposed by public sentiment in Canada. Recently, there has been a resurgence in the effort to implement NAWAPA, the North American Water and Power Alliance, as a result of the activities of Lyndon LaRouche and his LaRouche Pact. Now, let's watch a video which will provide us with some additional information about this proposed engineering project.
I look forward with great interest to discussing this question further with you. I'd be very pleased to hear from you. Sincerely, Frank Moss.
Mr. Grant Midgley, Office of Senator Frank Moss, March 15, 1966. Dear Mr. Midgley, it was a pleasure to meet with you recently in Washington and to hear of Senator Moss's progress with regard to NAWAPA. I have subsequently read with great interest the Senator's remarks in the Congressional Record of February 4, 1966. I thought that the Senator's statement should be brought to the attention of a number of people across Canada who are directly concerned with water resources. Would it be possible, therefore, to obtain 100 copies of this statement for redistribution through our office? Yours sincerely, George Francis, Canadian Council of Resource Ministers.
1966. Dear Senator Moss, we continue to receive all sorts of information of activity in Canada. As you probably know, Ned gave 2 presentations at Winnipeg on the 24th and 25th, and I gave a talk to the Northern Resources Conference in Whitehorse, Yukon on the 24th. All of these presentations were well received, and I think we're picking up a lot of support from technical people, which is not readily apparent in the press. We're also receiving, here in Los Angeles, an increasing number of visitors from Canada who are interested in looking at NAWAPA objectively. I think all these signs are encouraging. Best personal regards, very truly yours, Kenton D. McFarland. Manager of Public Relations, the Ralph M. Parsons
Mr. Ralph
Company,
M. Parsons,
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, California. Dear Mr. Parsons, quite some time ago I learned that you intended to present to President Johnson an animated display of the NAWAPA concept, which comes in sort of a briefcase. I was most pleased that you planned to do this. I understand that President Johnson had discussed the NAWAPA concept briefly when you were a guest at dinner at the White House. The President, of course, is intensely interested in water development, but he does not, I fear, know the details of the NAWAPA concept. The President is planning now to call a worldwide water conference in Washington next year. It's going to be called Water for Peace. And by that time, we certainly should have before him the most promising and imaginative scheme of NAWAPA. There is a continuing, growing interest in this great idea. Sincerely, Frank Moss.
July 12th, 1966. Dear Senator Moss, I have read your statesmanly address given in Quebec with great interest and profit. Your ideas were excellently set down, and with such diplomacy that it would seem to me that little ill feeling or distress could result in this long-range program if the people in Canada had an opportunity to become acquainted with your thinking. I wish to commend you for this address. Sincerely, Daniel K. Inouye, United States Senator, Hawaii.
The concept for a North American Water and Power Alliance has brought us up squarely to a point where we must prepare for the moment of decision which is surely coming. If anyone thinks this is but an engineer's pipe dream that will vanish with the pipe smoke, he is mistaken. In the United States, the federal and state governments and individuals who have a knowledge of water are considering the NAWAPA concept very seriously. The United States Senate thinks it's so important that the chairman of the Senate Committee on Public Works established a subcommittee on Western water development to study the NAWAPA proposals. American Statesman, Austin, Texas, October 9, 1966. Despite the objectors, there are some signs that NAWAPA may be edging closer to serious study. President Johnson met Ralph Parsons at a businessman's luncheon at the White House and has asked him back to discuss the project. The president likes Texas-sized plans, and it is clearly possible that he could recast NAWAPA as an administration project, if and when the Vietnam War is settled.
They're poor to be lifted up, and there's cities to be built, and there's a world to be helped. Yet, we do what we must.
It was pretty bad to listen to your friends crying out for help, not being able to do a thing. We just couldn't do anything. We were all pinned down. And,
Are you writing home about it just now?
yes, I'm writing my father right now.
February 20th, 1967. The Honorable Tom McCall, Governor of Oregon. Dear Governor McCall, I was delighted to read in the Christian Science Monitor of February 18th that you had endorsed the NAWAPA plan to bring water from Alaska and Canada southward into the United States. Your action in completing a water survey in Oregon is the thing that must be done by all of our states, and indeed by all the provinces of Canada, so that we have specifics to talk about. We do know, however, that vast amounts of fresh water flow unused into the northern Pacific and Arctic Oceans, and that this water could be utilized rather than totally wasted. Sincerely,
Dear
Frank
Senator
Moss.
Moss, it was exciting to get a letter of approbation from NAWAPA's #1 champion. Considerable research, including an aerial tour of the Columbia Basin on both sides of the border, has caused me to lean towards this awesome concept. I'm looking forward to completion of the water studies so that negotiations can begin in earnest on this urgent problem. Kindest personal regards, sincerely, Tom McCall, Governor of Oregon.
300 to 400 meters southeast of the town. Okay, we got it going.
I think we're just occupying ground and losing too many men. I'm losing too many men. If we were to stay here too much longer, we wouldn't have much left of this platoon, let alone the company.
The rifles have been jamming, the mud's been, has slowed everything down, and the artillery comes in everywhere, and it just gets pretty futile and frustrating.
The military can no longer justify this war with a casualty count. It may be that more Marines are dying along the DMZ than enemy. Anyway, no one doubts General Giap's strategy of sacrificing 10 of his own for 1 American, and few here believe our own exaggerated guesses at enemy casualties. You begin to suspect that we've reached the limits of our present strategy when the generals are talking openly about an invasion of the North, and the men around Con Chen are talking about the need for tactical nuclear weapons.
September 9th, 1967. Dear Senator Moss, when the time comes that our government is to take active proceedings on NAWAPA, I would like to offer my services in advance in some type of executive capacity. I have just returned from Ottawa, where I was visiting my friend, the recently retired Assistant Deputy Minister of Defense, Jim Sharp, with whom I have been keeping in touch on NAWAPA as an indirect promotion for some years. Jim tells me he recently discussed it with the Minister of Mines and Resources, and that the latter is very favorable toward it and trying to drum up support. Jim says, in general, the Canadian people now are quite for it, and the general belief in Ottawa seems to be that it is the U.S. government that is dragging its feet, rather than Canada. I believe, at least privately, Bennett of British Columbia is now admitting it would be a good thing. Sincerely, J.P. Neal,
14,
Systems Consulting Engineer, Mountain
Dear
View,
Mr. Neal,
California.
I appreciate your comments about the interest of the retired Assistant Deputy Minister of Defense and his report that many in Canada are now fully in support of the NAWAPA concept. There may be some substance to their saying that in America we are dragging our feet on this matter. I haven't been able to get any sort of action in the past several months. But with the encouragement of your report, perhaps we can get busy once again and see if we can move towards some hearings and perhaps open formal conversation with the Canadians on the water from the north. Sincerely,
December 29,
Frank Moss.
1967. Dear Mr. Strachan, we were pleased to receive your recent query concerning our North American Water and Power Alliance concept. We appreciate your interest. One of the points I would like to make is that NAWAPA is more important right now as a symbol than it is as a specific map routing of a water transfer and distribution system. It is a symbol of total water management. It embraces the things we need to do to preserve and extend the water resources of the continent. NAWAPA's primary significance is that it represents the first time the continent has been looked at as a whole with regard to the water resources. Best wishes for a prosperous and rewarding 1968. Very truly yours, K.D. McFarland.
Columns of smoke rose skywards as block after block in the capital city burned with the fires of Viet Cong treachery.
Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. My favorite poet was Aeschylus. He once wrote, "Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God."
That's the name representing the student body that in fact is the steering committee of their...
To establish a free, open, democratic, and meaningful discourse between faculty and students.
under his signature. To shoot to kill any arsonist or anyone with a Molotov cocktail in their hand in Chicago, to fire a building because they're potential murderers, and to issue a police order to shoot the maim or cripple anyone looting any stores in our city.
April 24th, 1970. Dear Senator Moss, we recently read that you feel Canada should not hoard her water, that indeed she has a moral obligation to share this abundance. And you say, if the United States population growth rate keeps on the way it's going, we're in for some privation in some areas if we can't get some of that water. Morality has nothing to do with it. And what we want to know is, why aren't you doing something about this population growth? Are we just going to keep growing and growing so we can gobble the whole world's resources? Why is everyone complaining about our environmental problems and no one admitting what the real cause of the ailment is? Sincerely, Mrs. Ann Stevens,
May 8th,
La Crescenta,
1970.
California.
Dear Senator Moss, there is no essential reason why the population of the western states should continue to increase at the rates projected. If there are inadequate resources of water or anything else to support these people, then that growth should be restricted. Sincerely, Ronald Seal, University of Windsor, Windsor, Ontario, Canada.
Dear Senator Moss, in Canada, some progress has been made in dispelling the myth that unused water is wasted water. Evidently, progress in the United States has been slower. The seemingly unused and hence wasted fresh water flowing into the Arctic is in fact of considerable importance to the Canadian environment, and perhaps to North America as a whole. The fact that it is not directly used by human society simply means that it is free to continue to perform its vital functions. Functions that have been conducted since the last ice age more than 10,000 years ago. I hope you will think very deeply on these things, Senator Moss, before lightly advocating the diversion and destruction of northern water systems to meet short-term needs that really stem from our genius for mismanagement and environmental destruction. Sincerely, D.A. Chand, Professor and Chairman of the Department of Zoology.
April 27th, 1971. Dear Senator Moss, we are presently studying the North American Water and Power Alliance in our graduate course, Water Resources Engineering at San Jose State College. What is the present status of NAWAPA in the federal government? Sincerely, Gerald E.
That we must assure ourselves that our fertile soil supplying us with food will not be rendered impotent due to a lack of vital water. Implementation of this project also offers a solution to the national crisis of unemployment, particularly aerospace people. I sincerely hope that this letter will serve to remind you of the increasing necessity of this project for our survival. Sincerely, Raymond Elmer
There is a
Webster.
tremendous opportunity here for Canadians to drop their sectional bickering and become united in a common cause by working together for their mutual provincial benefits in this gigantic undertaking. It would provide many jobs which Canada very much needs. Yours very truly, H.R. Dance.
Dear Senator Moss, I've followed with considerable interest and satisfaction your enthusiastic efforts related to the long-range development of our North American water resources. If we are going to have more people, we are going to need more water. Our population is increasing, and arable farmland is decreasing, with orchards and farmland daily being converted to housing developments. The once mighty Colorado River, which runs through our state, just doesn't have enough water for the demand of the western states, and we are now squabbling over its use. I again express my appreciation to you and your efforts on water resources.
January 10th, 1973. Mr. Philip Rifkin, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Dear Mr. Rifkin, I have your letter suggesting some adjustments in the NAWAPA plan. I am no longer chairman of the Subcommittee on Public Works which considered the NAWAPA proposal. That subcommittee is not in existence now. A number of years ago, I introduced a bill to provide for a feasibility report on NAWAPA. No action was taken on it, and it has not been reintroduced. The project has not received any attention in the past few years, and I don't know whether interest in it can be revived. Sincerely, Frank Moss.
I'm glad that you were able to join us for today's edition of International Definition. Today on International Definition, we examine the North American Water and Power Alliance, also known as NAWAPA. We did this as a part of the engineering tribute to the Presidential Inauguration of January 20th, 2013. And now, until our next broadcast, I'm your host, Kenneth Freelain, thanking you for joining us today.